All right, let's get started. First of all, that's a blanket statement for all the presentations. If you claim that I told you something, I will deny it. So that's what it says. We know product and product features can change. We're not making any commitments here. So I'm Liran. I'm Liran Bareket. I'm the Unity Catalog product specialist. I'm helping customers like you migrate and adopt Unity Catalog, and have been doing that since the inception of Unity Catalog. A little bit of history. We GA'd Unity Catalog exactly 2 years ago in Data and AI Summit. It started as a data governance solution primarily around securing data and catalogs and tables. And it was an optional component for Databricks. It was a kind of an add-on for governance. Fast forward to today, Unity Catalog is enabled by default. If you're a new customer, you have to go out of your way to not use Unity Catalog. It was extended to machine learning models and feature stores and others, as well as general purpose files using volumes. And it is used by nearly 100% of the customers. There are very few customers that haven't enabled Unity Catalog at all. The future state is, as I said, Unity Catalog will be the default for any new features and functionality Databricks will offer you guys, and we expect 100% of you to use it for 100% of the use cases. This is just a quick preview of everything that is on the pipeline, either that will be announced in this conference or coming in the coming weeks, that will be exclusive to Unity Catalog. And roughly you can divide these features to data governance feature, to machine learning governance features. Everything that has to do with LLM and vector search will be exclusive to Unity Catalog. And monitoring and intelligence, so Lakehouse IQ and all the features that feed you back data that we collect from you're accessing the data is all exclusive to Unity Catalog. This is to say, all of you have to really want to get on Unity Catalog. How many of you are in the process of adopting Unity Catalog? Raise a hand. How many of you are using UCX? Okay, by the time you're back in the office on Monday, I want it to be 100%. Okay, so hopefully we can get there. Okay. So I think we proved that right here. Okay, Unity Catalog challenges is a real thing. Upgrades are complicated. This is a chart of you adopting. I removed the numbers. It's divided by industry. We remove the labels, but what it is, the story it is telling is adoption is going very gradually and fairly slowly. Upgrades are very complicated. There's perceived and actual risk. By that I mean that you have no way to tell your management what's going to break by adopting Unity Catalog. It requires a lot of planning. It's a multi-team effort, and finally, it's expensive and expensive. What we're seeing for large customers is that it takes up to 18 months. And this is what we're trying to address today. When you do migration, that's kind of the blueprint on how to do migration, right? It's very, very rough. You start by assess and inventorize, like you create an inventory of all the assets you're going to migrate. You start by migrating your workspace group to account groups. You attach the meta store to enable the workspace with the Unity Catalog. You migrate your external table. These are the easier to migrate. You migrate your SQL warehouses to access this external table. Then you start migrating the jobs, the notebooks, all your assets. You migrate manage tables and finish by migrate all the remaining code, right? So this is kind of like how we would do it today. UCX is a Unity Catalog upgrade framework. You can scan this slide here. Unity Catalog is part of Databricks Lab project. I have here with me Serge, who is the technical lead for Databricks Lab. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to him. It's our effort to expand the project, to expand the product with resources outside of our core development team. There are daily PRs, so this Unity Catalog UCX is updated on a daily basis. So if you file a bug, if you requested a feature, you may see it. You may see it addressed overnight. We're attempting to be on a weekly release schedule, so new features are introduced weekly. This is the GitHub repository. It comes up from the link. And the functionality we're trying to address is assessment. Well, we will dive into each one of them individually. Assessment is assessing your current resources. Group migration, cloud infrastructure. So we will automate all the creation of all the cloud infrastructure elements for you. We will do table migration and finally code migrations. So these are the tasks, and this is kind of like the blueprint of how you would work with UCX. UCX is accessed by Databricks CLI. You start by installing it onto a workspace, and we will allow you to install it to more than one workspace at once, but you install it onto the workspace. You run an assessment workflow. We will touch on that. The assessment workflow essentially assesses your current state and what will have to be upgraded. The next thing you do is group migration. You migrate all your workspace group into the account group, again, automated by UCX. Next is table migration, then code migration. Code migration touch notebooks, touch jobs, and does all that. And we're attempting to automate all that for you. We create an inventory on your workspace that keeps all the elements specifically from the assessment, and we provide you with a bunch of dashboards to monitor the migration process. This is a case study. This is a real customer. It's a big manufacturing in EMEA. They have 400 workspaces. A typical workspace is around 350 databases, 100 tables per database, just to give you some scale. Millions and millions of workspace objects. Why do you care that you have so many millions workspace objects? Because these workspace objects will have to be migrated, or at the very least, the access to these workspace objects will have to be reassigned to account group. So needless to say, it's a monumental task to be done manually. And they are now completed all their group migrations, thousands of groups with tens of thousands of users. And they are now migrating workspace by workspace. We expect them to be done in 3 months. Without UCX, the timeline would have been for like that. I can't think of how long before they can be done. We will dive now into demo. I will show you all the components we talked about. Before we go into demo, maybe I will take a question real quick. Anybody? All right, let's dive into demo. The first thing you do is you install it. Okay, so now we see a workspace that is not enabled with the Unity Catalog. This is our sandbox workspace. The Metastore has a bunch of tables and, oh, hold on. I don't know why it doesn't run. Okay. The workspace has a bunch of tables that we will migrate. I'm just showing you one of these tables is an external table, and obviously it is pointing to an S3 bucket. We will use the CLI to install. So a lot of the operation is from the CLI, okay? The CLI is running on a machine not on the cluster. You can run it on the cluster itself or on the workspace itself, but here I'm running it from my laptop. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna validate that I have connection to the workspace and I'm authenticated with the workspace, and then I can get started. The next thing we'll do is I will trigger the Databricks labs install UCX. I'm specifying a profile, but if your default profile is pointing to your workspace, you're all set. You don't have to specify a profile. And I'll run the command. It will download all UCX and the dependency and will deploy it onto the workspace. You have to specify the database name that will be created. And by the way, we have now an option. So by default, you would need the cluster to be able to access the internet to download packages. But we have now an option where this is not required, where all the downloads will happen from the client, from the CLI, and the workspace doesn't have to have access to the internet. Okay, once it's installed, the first thing we will do is we will do the assessment. You run the assessment by running a workflow. You can trigger it by running the CLI command, or by default, the installation will ask you if you want to run the assessment by default. We will run the workflow. Now, this workflow essentially scans all your assets and report on them. It can take from anywhere from few minutes, like obviously, just one. It can take anywhere from minutes to hours to even more than a day, in case you have a lot of assets, a lot of particular table in your HMS, and we will wait for it to be done. Okay, so yeah, you had a question. What? Can I zoom in? Not really, but all these commands are in the documentation, so you don't have to take it from here, okay? But I'm just like showing you okay, sorry. So the next thing I will do is once the assessment workflow has been completed, we're going to examine the dashboard. Now, so as you can see, like few dashboard has been created by the workflow. We're trying to estimate cost and other things, but this is the default dashboard. It shows you your readiness. It shows you how many tables, views, storage locations were identified. We're concentrating on table migration in this demonstration, so you don't see any of the other assets. It gives you some assessment summary. It gives you counts. It gives you like the lay of the land of your upgrade. The next thing you will do is we will assign a meta store. Again, it can be done from the UI or it can be done by a CLI command. Here we go to the account console and I show you that this particular workspace is not assigned to a meta store. You can obviously do it manually here, or I will show you the command. The command is assign a meta store. I'm specifying the workspace ID. Yeah, it is too small, sorry. I'm assigning it to the workspace ID. If you have more than one meta store, you will specify the meta store ID. You click the button and it does what it should do to assign the meta store to, you have to select an account and it will assign the meta store to the workspace. Then I will go back to the workspace and I will show you that this workspace was enabled with the UC. So first thing, we will go to the account console and you can see it here, but I will go then to the workspace. So you see Metastore was specified, so I know that this account is set with, that this workspace is set with a metastore, and I go to the workspace, and I can see that this has the system catalog, so that means that the workspace is using it. Okay, we're going to skip group migration, but I will tell you in 2 words what happens here. Group migration takes all the workspace groups and copy them to the account, okay? And it then scan all the objects within the workspace and repoint them at the groups that were created at the account level. This is a very tedious task to do manually, but very simple to do using the group migration. There are not a lot of decision, and it's very deterministic, so it's fairly simple to do with UCX. The next thing I will show you is table migration. So the first thing the first thing you have to do is we have to create table mapping. Table mapping essentially takes each one of the HMS tables that you have and create a pointer or a target to where it will go in Unity Catalog. By default, all the tables will be mapped to a single catalog, and the name of the table and the name of the database will remain the same. You can then edit it. You can edit it with the built-in editor, which is not very recommended because it doesn't have any checks or anything or any validation. Or you can export it to Excel, but when you import it back, just make sure to convert it back to CSV. I'm showing you here that I updated it. I changed few of the catalog. I changed all the catalog's name to business meaningful name. I changed a couple of the target databases, so not all the tables are going into the same place. Okay, the next thing that will happen is we have to create a bunch of cloud assets for the migration, not for the migration, for UC to operate. And we will demonstrate on AWS, but all the commands other than one that I will specify are available for Azure as well. So we will dive right in. So the first thing I will do is I will install the AWS client, and I will validate that I can make a connection. I run the SSO or make sure I can make the connection to the AWS account. Okay. Okay, so the first thing that we do in AWS is we run principal prefix access command. Essentially, we scan all the roles and all the instance profiles, and we create a list of the instance profiles and their target and the S3 prefixes that they have access to. And we do it for all the locations we identified that have tables in them. Okay, so we're showing the command run, it scans all the roles, and it generates a couple of CSVs. One is for the UC roles access is all the UC enabled run, and the other is AWS instance access. Essentially give you the role and give you the S3 prefix it has access to, and we can continue from there. Okay. The next thing we do in AWS is we create missing principal. Create means the command parameters allow you to override the default role name and policy name. It prompts the user it suggests the creation of this one role with access to these 2 locations. And then when it created the role, it creates it properly. And that's not an easy task. It creates all the trust. You will see it creates the trust relationship, and I will show you I will show you the role that was created. So the role that is created with the proper trust relationship and with the access to the locations. So here's the policy. So you see the access to these two locations and all the proper actions. I don't know if you can see it. It's far. And we're creating the proper trust relationship to the account itself for self-assuming and to the Databricks UC account. Okay. The next thing was, and this was AWS only, but this happens. This works on Azure as well. Migrate credential creates the credentials you need in Databricks, and then it creates the credentials. We will show you. So it just go ahead and create the credential. So you see, we created the credentials. We created this one role. You invalidate configuration. It works, luckily. And the other thing it does, in AWS, it goes back to the role and set the trust relationship to include this role ID with this external ID, which is the credential ID. So this is a step, like if an administrator has to do it, it's very confusing and prone to mistakes. The next thing we do is we run migrate locations. Run migrate locations, create the external locations needed for Unity Catalog. And we see like 2 external locations were created and they are pointing into the S3 locations for the team. Okay. The next thing is we create catalog schema, create catalog schemas, create all the catalogs and schemas that are required for this migration. And you can, for each schema, specify a location. The location is the location for the managed tables. Or you can default it to the Metastore location, which is not recommended. It's not best practice. We do expect you to provide a managed location for each one of these schemas. Okay, so here I'm specifying a managed location for each one of the schemas, and the 2 schemas are created. Okay, I will show you that they were created. Like I created one that is called client info and another one that is called lookup. Finally, before we can do the upgrade, it is creating an Uber principal. So Uber principal is a service principal or instance profile in the case of AWS that can have access to all the locations. The reason we need it is we need the cluster that do the migration to have access to the legacy data as well as to UC data. So that we call that Uber principal. We create it. We create this principal and we assign it to the cluster policy of the cluster that will be performing the migration. And now we're ready for table migration. The table migration is somewhat anticlimactic. We run migrate tables, which will run the workflow, or we can run the workflow itself. And I will, and now we are migrating like the built-in migrate tables, and we will show you migrate multiple types of tables. It migrates DBFS root table by deep cloning them. It migrates DBFS root non-delta tables by doing create table as to delta, and you see all these steps. Each one is a different type of tables. We're doing external tables by sync. We're migrating all the external tables by syncing them, and we have other options, and you can augment it to add other options as well. When the migration is done, there's a dashboard that shows you the migration state of each individual table. Okay. We will take a look at the migrated table. You will see that we flagged it, the table properties is flagged with upgraded from, so a pointer to the Hive meta store where the table is upgraded from and they upgraded to. So that's how we bind the two together. We will take a look at one of the views. We migrate views as well. And what I will show you is this view is pointing to a table, obviously, right? So with the view, we change the table reference to point from the original table to the migrated table. And we can do it with view-to-view relationship, nested relationship. We're pretty smart about it. And this is a hint in what's coming. This is using the same mechanism that then will be used to upgrade your notebooks, your SQL, and so on and so forth. Okay, finally, and I think the highlight is code migration. Okay, so code migration will migrate your legacy code to UC compatible code eventually. As a first step, we're doing what we call the linting, meaning highlighting all the lines of code in your legacy code or your current workspace code that has to be touched for a proper migration to UC. Initially, we start with migrating local codes, so you will have to use Git or something to get all the code locally. And then I run it inside my editor, so it shows me for each table, it shows me for each table what line of code and why it is not compatible with UC, and you can go in and fix it. In future iteration, we will try to fix it ourselves. Okay, few resources before we open for questions. So Serge is running a session automating unique catalog migration with UCX, building robust Python application, which will take you to behind the scene of how this application was developed. The reason you may be interested in this talk is if you want to develop any application in-house and you want to borrow any of the techniques we use in UCX, UCX is open source, you can download it, and you can use a lot of the elements, a lot of the testing elements, a lot of the other elements in UCX to develop your own application. Another reason is if you have a case that is not supported by UCX and you want to extend UCX to support your use case, you can extend UCX using your own code. All right, few other resources. This is where you can get UCX. You can go to the Databricks labs on GitHub and go to UCX. You can search the documentation. It is included in the documentation now. Few other talks you may want to attend if you're interested in UC is UC will be big in keynotes, so make sure to catch that. Attribute-based access control, we're introducing attribute-based access control, so there will be a talk about that. There's a talk about federation. Managed table, what's new in UC is another talk, and we have a lot of customer testimonial if you want to see how other customers are using UC. Thank you all for coming. I will stay here a little longer. You can reach to me and ask any question. Thank you very much.